a little bit. Let's talk some Chiefs, guys. Good afternoon, as you can tell from the wonderful incandescent lighting, or maybe that's just, regular lighting. Anyway, I am Seth Kaiser, or Minnesota Chiefs fan, and this is the Chief of the North here on RGR Football, where every week we talk some Chiefs. I'm excited to do that with you guys today. We finally got some preseason action. I've broken down the film with some guys, and I've broken down the film with another guy that I haven't written about yet. So it's a great day for us to talk some Chiefs film. Just like we try to do every week, though, I'm going to answer some mailbag questions that you guys had from last week. If I sound a little different than normal, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, but that's okay. Some days you have less energies than other days, and we're going to push through. So I'm going to go to the comment section of last week, take a look at some of the mailbag questions you guys asked. As usual, if you want to ask mailbag questions, I'll prioritize the ones down there. Sometimes I'll put out a tweet asking people to, or an X or a post, whatever it's called these days, and I'll ask people to provide mailbag questions there, but not this week because there's plenty of questions there and there's plenty of film to talk about. And so let's get right into it, shall we? Lev Mass says, and he puts question marks in front of it, which makes it a lot easier for me. So Seth, after listening to Times Ours this evening, just want to say thanks for all the content with Josh and Nate over the years. It's been great rooting for you guys, and look forward to seeing what the next evolution is for each of you, whether it's together in your own individual ways. Here's the silly question. Now, I'll address what he started off with in a second if you haven't listened to the most recent episode of Times Ours, but we won't spend too much time on that, because we're on Ryan's time here. Come on, people. No, I do appreciate it, Lev. Let's say the Chiefs have a draft pick in every round next year. A genie appears to Brett Veach and says if he trades his first-round pick, Mahomes will be 100% healthy all year. If he trades the second-round pick, Kelsey will be 100%. Third round, Kadarius Toney. Fourth round, Bolton and Gay. Fifth round, your adult son, Creed. Sixth round, Pacheco. Seventh round, Jordy Fortson. Which picks would you consider trading for the guaranteed availability for these things? It's tricky because trading too many picks results in some hard cap situations down the line. Given the fact that these guys have generally taken care of themselves, I don't know. Maybe I would do a third rounder to ensure Kadarius Toney's health, if only to see what he looks like for the full season. Other than that, I'm okay. Injuries are part of football. Other than, with Patrick Mahomes, it's that one's very, very tempting, but you don't want to create cap problems for yourself down the road. And so I don't know if I'd take much of those, just the unknown, just the draft picks are too important, I think. In terms of the rest of what he said, those of you who listen to Times Ours, we recorded our last episode last week. I've talked about this industry before. The Athletic is kind of going another direction with some of its audio stuff. That's totally fine. It's very amicable. They treated us great. They gave us a wonderful send-off, gave us an opportunity to say goodbye to everyone. Everything I have to say about Times Ours is in that episode. Have a listen, and stay tuned to maybe hear about what Josh, Nate, and myself might be doing next. So anyway, listen to the episode if you want to hear everything I have to say about Times Ours. It's 4 years, very special thing to me. Bradley Havens asks, all due respect to your crazy schedule, Seth, is there any way you could squeeze in an RGR Presents a Chief of the North Ministry session series? I'd watch and tell my friends about it too. I'll run that up the flagpole with Ryan. One thing I always try to do when it comes to almost anything that's not related to football is I'm kind of careful, simply because when you do what I do and people count on you to put in the work with regards to the industry that you are in, mine being football, people count on you to have really done your homework, really done your legwork, and treat you kind of as an authority on certain subjects. So I'm always careful what I say about other subjects because they might attach that same authority to that. It might be a subject that I'm not nearly as qualified to talk about. But RGR Presents a Chief of the North Ministry would be a lot of fun. I've actually thought about at times starting a Substack, just kind of talking about things that are a little more that nature. But, time is a big thing. And we've all got our concentric circles of ministry and people that count on us and rely on us. And so I've got to be most cognizant of my family and my local church and the things that I can do there. But I promise I'll think about it. Brian Butler, commented, me and Gary are the best analysts with the worst backgrounds. One of these days, I will get a good webcam. One of these days, I promise. And like framing shots and stuff, I really should learn about that. Mice and Scene is a great place to start. I appreciate the advice. Thank you. One of these days, when things are a little less crazy for me, I'll start putting more effort into that stuff. It's not because I don't care. It's just that my time is spent doing the film reviews and that kind of stuff. And one of these days, I'm not that good looking a guy anyway, so it's not going to get any better the better you can see me. Matt Francis made a good comment here that I kind of liked. I think when people point to time of possession in games where the Chiefs are defeated, that's more a byproduct of the victorious team just playing a really good game. I agree that keep away is not necessarily a solid game plan around KC. We talked about that last week. Keep away doesn't necessarily work because it requires continued efficiency in the ground game, which is very difficult to sustain over 4 quarters. You're going to end up with some 3 and outs. And that even just 1 3 and out can totally destroy a game plan built around ball possession. That's because you're talking, somewhere between 9 and 11 possessions per game. And it's really hard to limit a team based solely around the ground game and playing keep away because the other team gets the ball too. And like we talked about last week, if you have this wonderful 7-minute drive, 8-minute drive, 9-minute drive, then the other team scores in 45 seconds, you've basically reset everything to where you're still on the same schedule as you would be. Charles Nielsen asks, hey, Seth, I agree they should extend Jones, but if they just can't get a deal done, what do you do at the end of the season, assuming nothing has changed and an agreement is still impossible? Would they be able to tag and trade him, or would they have to settle for a compensatory pick? I'm sure they would tag and trade him. They wouldn't get quite the same return given that he's on the tag, but there is a lot of precedent for teams being willing to still part with a first-round pick and that kind of stuff for a guy on the tag, especially a guy as great as Jones. We'll see if they get it done. I hope he doesn't just play the last year of his contract without an extension because I think Chris Jones is one of the best defensive players to ever play in Kansas City. I think he's an elite player. I think their entire defense revolves around what he can do. So hopefully they get something done beyond this year, but we'll see what happens. Toad Sage Tommy says, Seth, I'm a huge fan of yours in RGR. Oh, well, that's very, very kind of you. That being said, is Trent McDuffie, my favorite non-Chris Jones defensive player, a legitimate number 1 corner if we can't keep Snead? I think so, yes. I've said this before, and I do think it's true. I think by the time the season ended last year, I think Trent McDuffie was already the best coverage corner on the team. And that doesn't mean that Snead is a bad coverage corner. He's not. He's an above average to good coverage player. His versatility bumps him up to a higher level, but he's a solid coverage player, a good one even. But I think McDuffie is better and more consistent and a little more, just a little more high level with some of the things he can execute. He's got a little bit looser hips. He's a little quicker. He's got great athleticism. He's just a really good corner overall. There's the question here. Give Jones 4 years, 120 with 80 million guaranteed. So it's really 3 years and 26.7 and repeat. The worry he's going to fall off is ridiculous. Even if he takes a step back, he's still capable of being Cam Hayward in his early mid-30s, 9 to 11 sacks every year. And I think the big thing is with Chris Jones, you count it in terms of impact, not just sack numbers, because from the interior, those are going to vacillate back and forth depending on your situation. I do think that there's ways to get this done to where the number per year is at that 30 or, right around Donald money, while you still give yourself an out after 3 years before he hits 33 and you've got an opportunity to get it done. But I don't know what the offer is. And this is the part with these negotiations. Everyone wants someone to blame. But I think what's tough here is that there's a bunch of things going on here. One is that the Chiefs are a contender, so they, by their very nature, are usually fairly maxed out against the cap. And, they've got a budget that they set for cash spending, agree with it or not. That's where they're at. There's the fact that Chris Jones is arguably the best player at his position in the league, which always makes those negotiations complicated because it gives the player more leverage than they normally have. And then the other thing, and maybe the biggest thing, is you've got the Aaron Donald contract and then everyone else. And so you've got this huge gap here that you normally don't have with positions. Normally you've got like the best guys and it just kind of moves its way forward. Whereas here, because of how much better Donald was than everyone else when he came up for his contract and what a different player he was, you ended up with this massive gap. And so that makes it complicated as well. Doug B asks, Seth, is there any difference in running a kickoff and punt back? Why can't one player perform both? Well, generally so they're both going to look different. And so try to, almost like maybe close your eyes if you want. I don't know if you're a visual person, and picture what you were seeing when you're returning a punt or a kickoff. With a kickoff, you've got that setup all in front of you with it coming in that way. Whereas with a punt, it's a little different. You've got your gunners, right? But you've also got the middle of the field a little more clogged up. It's just not quite the same setup. You also usually have more of a running start with a kickoff as opposed to with a punt. You're just catching it in place, and you're going to be asked to make the first guy miss almost immediately. Whereas with a kickoff, you get much more of a running start. It's more about angles and acceleration and seeing things develop in front of you. Whereas punting, you've got a little more about quickness. It's obviously speed and vision matter for both, but with punts, it's a little more about quickness, being able to shake off that first tackler. So it's just subtle differences, but that's why like a guy like Isaiah Pacheco, who isn't necessarily quick, but he is fast and has good acceleration. He's a guy who can return kickoffs, but not necessarily punts as well. They also come down differently with how they catching them is just a little bit of a different ball game. The only reason I know some of this stuff is because I actually asked a very similar question not too long ago. Brian Butler also asked, who would win in a fight, the Keebler Elves or the Smurfs? Well, there's so many more Smurfs, and they have Papa Smurf, so I don't think it's even close, honestly. And an adorable human said, see you in Burrowhead January 1st. Whether that was trolling or not, I have no idea, but it was funny. All right. We've gone through a few of the mailbag questions. I want to talk really quick. We're already at 12 minutes here, but I want to talk really quick about some of the film reviews I've done this week on the Chief of the North newsletter. If you want to subscribe, mnchiefsfan.substack.com or bit.ly/Seth really hates money. I could put those on the screen, but honestly, bit.ly/Seth really hates money. You can remember that. You're fine. And so what I've done, I've broken down a couple of film reviews so far this week. I've actually reviewed Rashee Rice's film. I haven't written the article yet. That should come up on Friday. And I'm going to try to get to Wanya Morris as well. I might actually just write kind of condensed film reviews for both of them and just publish it in the same article. So it won't be quite as lengthy for either one, but we'll at least get the film review out there. But I did talk about Justin Ross, and that's something I just talked about. He passed his biggest test yet with sharp routes and physicality. So I just want to talk about that really quick, what the things I was looking for with Justin Ross. And so this was his touchdown. Everyone got excited. And one thing that I reminded people, though, before the game is you don't get excited about a touchdown in preseason just for its own sake, because you need to know the why. Why did it happen? What specifically occurred that made it something that you're kind of excited about? And in this case, with Justin Ross being a younger player, the thing that made me excited about it, and I wrote about this here, and we'll just talk about this very briefly, is the way that he bent his route around the coverage. And so what you've got here, you've got an underneath zone defender, and you've got a couple of safeties over the top, right? So what he needs to do is find that gap in between them, and you've got to make sure that you don't start curling your route inside, because if you go too far outside here, you're going to come right where the safety can get you. But if you start moving inside too soon, you're going to have this inside defender right here. You're going to have him cheat this way and take away that passing lane. And so what Ross does is he curls his route at the exact right place as soon as he's by the eyes of the defender here. And he does a nice job continuing to take his route out up the field to where he's out of this guy's range. But you see that he doesn't take it so far up the field. He slows himself down a little bit, so that way he doesn't bring himself right into the safety. Simple thing, but it is a little bit of a nuance. And that's what I appreciated about his touchdown and some of the other routes that he ran. He showed just a little bit quicker feet than you might think. He's not really a separator, and he's not going to be. But if he runs his routes with precision, like what you saw here, and then, of course, you've got the yards after catch capability. If he runs his routes with precision, that can make up for a lack of natural quickness. So that's something that just jumped out to me, the how with Justin Ross, not necessarily just the what. Another guy that I broke down is FAU. He's his first action as an edge rusher for the Chiefs. And I enjoyed what I saw out of him. I charted him as having 6 pressures. I charted every one of his snaps. You can check that out at the Chief of the North newsletter. But one of the things that I really liked, and this snap kind of exemplifies some of it, was the blending together of moves. And that's something that I write about at length. But you watch here, you end up with a push pull into a rip, and there's not really a lot of hesitation in between them. And you see the natural hand strength, able to get that left arm off and free his hands. It's something he showed a little bit of a knack for, and he was able to corner at least decently. Those are the things that you look for: that ability to corner a little, enough hand strength, and correct hand placement to rip free and be able to free your hands to where they can't slow you down. And then the fact that he blends it together. He doesn't just go straight into the rip. You got a little bit of the appearance of some push pull action, and he blended some pass rush moves together in a way that I liked. I broke down 3 or 4 other snaps in pretty great detail. Not as in it was great, but as in it was more detail. I mean, contextually, that made me sound like I was praising my own work, which is weird. Check that out, the Chief of North newsletter. But those are 2 guys that I really noticed. And then I reviewed every snap of Rashid Rice. I'm going to be writing about it tonight. He showed some of the things that I really liked in his college film, making tough catches, yards after catch, seems to run good, decent routes, seems to have an understanding of where he's supposed to be. I am still concerned about his ability to separate against man coverage, and that's something that I'll be writing about in more detail. With Wanya Morris, I haven't started reviewing his film yet, but I know I didn't notice him much during the game, and I noticed some clean pockets, so here's hoping that that's what that shows. All right, that's the time we have. I appreciate your questions. I appreciate every one of you. I will be back next week. We'll be talking here about whatever we see against the Cardinals here in preseason week 2. It's so great to have football back. It's so great to talk to you guys. It's a great week to be a Chiefs fan.